Victor Stout had built his fortune on foresight, control, and preparation. Those same instincts led him to install discreet security cameras throughout his expansive home, not out of paranoia for his wealth, but out of concern for his daughter. 12-year-old Emma had been paralyzed from the waist down after a reckless driver ran a red light 3 years ago, shattering not only Emma's spine but also the fragile world Victor had believed he could protect with money alone. Since that day, the mansion had filled with doctors, therapists, nurses, and maids who came and went like seasonal staff. Some kind, some careless, some merely there for the paycheck. Victor had learned the hard way that not everyone treated a vulnerable child with the patience and dignity she deserved. A raised voice caught by accident, a rough tug on a wheelchair, a therapist who skipped exercises when she thought no one was watching. Each incident chipped away at Victor's trust. So, he hid cameras, tiny and silent, embedded in corners, lamps, and shelves, telling himself it was only to keep Emma safe. Yet even as the feed streamed to his private office, Victor rarely watched them anymore. Seeing his daughter's daily struggle through a lens felt like reopening a wound. When the previous maid quit abruptly, citing emotional exhaustion, Victor hired a new one without much thought. Her name was Clara. She was quiet during the interview, her resume plain, her references brief but sincere. She didn't flatter him or stare at the marble floors in awe. She asked only one question. Does Emma like music? Victor barely noticed it at the time. The first week passed uneventfully. Clara kept the house spotless, prepared simple meals, and followed Emma's schedule precisely. Victor, buried in meetings and late-night calls, barely crossed paths with her. Emma, however, seemed different. The girl who once answered questions with shrugs or monosyllables started lingering in the kitchen when Clara hummed softly while cooking. Her eyes followed Clara's movements with a curiosity Victor hadn't seen in years. One evening, Victor returned home early, exhausted and restless, and decided, for reasons he couldn't quite explain, to open the camera feeds. He expected nothing. Perhaps that was why what he saw unsettled him so deeply. On the screen, Clara sat on the floor beside Emma's wheelchair, not speaking, not doing therapy, not even touching her. She was simply there, matching her breathing to Emma's, eyes closed, palms resting on the cool tile. After a long moment, she whispered something Victor couldn't hear clearly. Emma's shoulders, usually tense, slowly dropped. Victor leaned closer to the screen. Clara began tapping softly on the floor, a rhythm so gentle it barely registered, then handed Emma 2 wooden spoons. The girl hesitated, confused, then tapped them together. Clara smiled, not the practiced smile of an employee, but something raw and encouraging, and began tapping back. A rhythm formed, clumsy at first, then steady. Emma laughed, a sound Victor realized he hadn't heard freely in months. Victor froze. This wasn't in any care manual. It wasn't therapy or routine. It was connection. The next feed showed Clara later that night adjusting Emma's blanket with painstaking care, speaking to her as if she were a partner in conversation rather than a burden to manage. You don't have to be brave all the time, she said softly. You can be tired. I'll stay. Victor felt a tightening in his chest. Over the next few days, he watched more. Clara never knew. He saw her read to Emma, not from children's books, but from adventure novels, pausing to ask her opinion on the hero's choices. He saw her carry Emma, not lift, but guide through exercises long after the physical therapist had left, turning each movement into a game, celebrating effort rather than success. Then came the moment that shattered Victor's assumptions. Late one night, the camera in the living room captured Emma in tears, her fists clenched, voice shaking with frustration, and she rarely voiced aloud. I hate this chair, she sobbed. I hate being stuck. Victor's instinct was to rush downstairs, but he stopped, compelled to watch. Clara knelt in front of Emma, her face level with hers. She didn't contradict her. She didn't offer hollow reassurance. She said, I know. Then she did something Victor never expected. She placed Emma's hands on her own legs and said, Tell me what you miss. Emma faltered, then whispered, Running. Clara nodded, then gently moved Emma's hands to her knees as she shifted her weight. Then feel this, she said. This is movement. Different doesn't mean gone. She described every step she took as she slowly walked in place, narrating the sensation as if inviting Emma into it. Emma listened, breathing slowing, eyes focused. When she finished, she said, Your body remembers. We'll remind it together. Victor felt tears blur the screen. In that moment, he understood something painful and humbling. All his money, all his vigilance, all his hidden cameras had protected Emma from harm, but none of it had given her hope. Clara did that without realizing anyone was watching. The next morning, Victor called Clara into his office. She stood calmly, hands folded, expecting perhaps criticism. Victor struggled to speak. He confessed about the cameras, not defensively, but with shame, and told her what he had seen. Clara listened, steady, then said quietly, "I'm glad you saw the real her." Victor offered her a raise, a contract, anything she wanted. Clara shook her head. "Just let me keep helping her," she said. "Not as a job, as a promise." From that day on, the cameras stayed, but Victor no longer watched out of fear. He watched to learn. Emma began physical therapy with renewed determination, not because she believed she would walk tomorrow, but because she believed she was more than what she had lost. The mansion changed. Laughter echoed where silence once lived. And Victor, the man who thought control was protection, learned that sometimes the greatest safety comes from trust.